How are you doing?
Good, good. I'm doing very well. It's the summer. The weather is pretty good, at least where I'm at in Columbus, Ohio, so I can't complain too much. What about you? Where are you based at, Michael?
Yeah, I'm based in beautiful Rhode Island, so you
Okay.
may have been here once for a wedding. Is generally how people come across Rhode Island, but great state, under the radar. If you're in Boston, come on down
Okay.
for an hour. Yeah,
Michael, are you born and raised Rhode Island or?
I'm a Bostonian,
Okay.
so I've managed to bury the accent, but
Yeah, that's incredible. I hear there's no trace of accent. But I guess that's what happened. Yeah. So hey, we were chatting before we hit record. I would love for you to talk first before we get into this topic we discussed around revenue forecasting and hitting targets, to just talk about your history a little bit, because I think it's really interesting, especially given where you've come from and how you've blossomed into a much more sort of business oriented role and career, even something more biz dev related in some cases. Just talk to me about your history, what you've been through, and why it's been really valuable to you along your own journey and how that helps you with your own consultancy today.
yeah, definitely. So I got into the agency space in 2013. So going on 13 years now. I started off as a junior software developer and was in that role for a number of years. And I really appreciate that that kind of gave me a lens into what developers, designers in the project work each day, are going through. Um, Eventually transitioned into project management because, thinking about kind of what was around the corner, worrying about upcoming deadlines was really a strength of mine. And love project management work. Um, in the course of doing that, got pulled onto business development calls so I could kind of speak to how we do the work, planning roadmaps, working with the team to put proposals together. Um, and yeah, when the agency needed a new business developer in that role, they asked me if I wanted to do it. I said not really, but I'll do it if we need to. And then I ended up doing that for probably 3 or 4 years, and was lucky to see that agency grow quite a bit. We were probably around 20 or 25 people when I stepped into the role, and at one point we had crested to over 75 people, and that brought with it a whole set of interesting challenges, from hiring business developers to support that level of headcount, to eventually hiring a director of business development to backfill my role so that I could move into an operations and COO role. After serving for a couple of years as a COO at that original agency, I moved over to a smaller agency out of New York that was doing some interesting things around profit sharing and transparency, and really a worker forward company that had some interesting operational challenges. So spent the last 3.5 years doing that. And these days I am consulting, working with agencies that are either getting their initial processes in place as they grow from kind of a small, 6 to 10 person team, to agencies that are scaling, over 20 and are starting to bring in director level roles and just need more coordination and thinking about how their agency is going to evolve.
So I know I said I wanted to start with your revenue target or your win rate conversation, but I'm going to change my mind real quickly in real time. So what's interesting is you've been through a number of different inflection points in your career inside of agencies. Certainly have worn a lot of hats, which is really valuable. Um, as you are now working with agencies as a consultant, and you think about agencies on that 6 to 10 employee journey, and then maybe we'll call it 20 to 30, and then the next inflection point is maybe closer to 50 employees, very generically speaking. What are the things that are top of mind for you as you drop into these types of organizations and you're helping them? Are you seeing common pitfalls at 6 to 10 as an example, and are you applying common solutions, or is every agency different and they all need a custom approach, if you will?
So the main things I see with smaller agencies are helping the founder get themselves out of the day-to-day work. So the
Yep.
first thing with that is a lot of times helping the founder to recognize where are they adding value, um, and what are they uniquely suited to do versus what's work that other people could do, which they're not uniquely suited to do.
Mm-hmm.
Every founder only has so many hours in the day. If you're doing work that can be done by someone else on your team, there's a huge opportunity cost to that. So identifying what's the work that needs to be done, helping founders think about the roles and hires that they need to make so that they can build a team that they can build trust with. And then third, starting to delegate tasks to those deputies or lieutenants and folks, so that you're just making the most of the founder's time, and then also creating an environment where other people can, lead by example as well.
Yeah.
As we go up in headcount on these agencies, thinking about what is the right org structure. I think a lot of creative agencies want to stay flat as long as possible. And to do that, you need to have really strong project leaders themselves, because so much of the
Mm-hmm.
work that we're doing is client facing and it's in the day to day of the projects. So if you don't want to have tiers of directors and managers, you need to build really strong project leads so that they can lead the projects, 80-90% of the time, and then pull in a head of engineering or a head of design when a specific problem is starting to rear its head that's not going to be solvable by the immediate project team. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so talk to me then about, let's assume that you come into an organization at that 6 to 10 or even 10 to 15 stage, and you help them replicate some key priorities or tasks from the leader, the owner, and now you have dedicated personnel who are taking on these things. You are empowering team members and employees to do more work. You are building out that PM practice. I think that's especially important and relevant to more digital or engineering focused agencies too, and we can get into that. But let's just assume that I've been going down that path. I'm having some success, and now I'm hitting the, I don't know, 20 to 30, maybe even 40 people. And granted, there could be multiple phases within here. But what are those challenges that you've seen either in your career in the past or with organizations you work with today? Are there common pitfalls, or again, it just depends on the agency, their client types, their service types, or is there something to be learned for every agency owner that is going through that stage that we all probably have in common?
Yeah. I think the main thing to think about is, how did you get to that 20, 30, or 40 headcount? Was it
Mm,
gradual, intentional? You've carved out a niche in the space, and your team is really viewed as one of the top, if not the top, agencies that does that type of work.
mm,
Um, at that point, you've got a sustainable business side of the agency, hopefully, and you can focus more on making great hires, seeing where processes are going to need to be modified just to support a larger headcount, and those sorts of things. I don't think that a lot of agencies reach that headcount that way. I think a lot of agencies grow through a large client or two.
mm,
Um, at that point, you probably have a few things you're dealing with. One, you've needed to hire up probably pretty quickly to service this revenue that's come in. So, how do you maintain quality? How do you maintain standards in your hiring? There's a lot of operational work that has to happen there to make sure you're not diluting the quality of your work. And then on the other side, you've got the business development questions. So, when you have one or two clients where things just clicked, and you're doing work with them, and they're making up a large piece of your business, well, you need to figure out what happens when those clients go away, and how can you start to generate leads and opportunities that can be landing spots for team members when a project winds down, or to continue your growth and just bring down the percent of revenue that those whale clients are making up.
All right, so this is probably a good segue into the topic that we were touching on before we started recording. I know you have some interesting thoughts as it relates to planning for the future, forecasting, calculating win rates. Walk us through that, because I will say this as a preface to what you're about to tackle. As an accounting and advisory firm, and an organization who supports, at this point, over 140 agencies every single day, that's tough. Forecasting for the future, given what we know today, which is always incomplete, right? So even if we have all of the inputs from a client about what's in that pipeline, and they are extremely timely and accurate in their information gathering, even then, things do not always turn out the way we expect. And it's really hard to plan or predict for the future. And that has downstream effects on literally everything else. Staffing, net new hires. Do I need to cut staff? Do I need to find contractors? The health of my teams, the health of the delivery. And it's something that we are always sort of using as a constant point of emphasis with our clients, and always trying to improve our approach. But I thought the way that you approach it, as I was listening to you, is novel, honestly. And so I'd love for you to talk about how you think about win rates and how you apply that to predicting the future, or planning for the future within an agency.
Yeah, definitely. Love to get into it. The first thing you need to look at is what are your current costs, obviously. So if you're an agency that's, not just kicking off, you have payroll, you have existing costs. So to have a healthy profit margin, you can determine what a revenue target should be based on your current team size. So the exercise we'll go through can be relevant to understanding, am I over, do I have too many people on payroll right now, or maybe I don't have enough and I need to hire. But I think the thing to think about is, first, are you trying to calculate what your revenue will be over the next 12 months? Or do you have a win rate that you even monitor? I think a lot of agencies, especially in the early stages, if it's the founder doing most of the business development work, they may not even establish a target win rate. They may not have a great sense of a target for the revenue that they want to see come in. And the issue with that is that you end up managing to what's in your business development pipeline currently, and the current clients that you have. And that's kind of how you're making decisions. A lot of the agencies that I work with, they have a lead to close period of maybe 60 days. I wish clients came to us saying, hey, in 4 months, I want to kick off a project with you. But a lot of times clients come, and they want to get going in 30 days.
Yeah.
So if we think about this 60-day lead to close time, and you look at your pipeline, 0 to 30 days of what you see in your pipeline, that's probably 90% accurate. There's not a lot that you can change within the next 30 days. So that's not even really helpful in future planning. Between 31 days and 60 days, that gives you time to hire a freelancer or contractor if you need to service a project that comes in. So there's some decision making that you can do based on work in that window. And then beyond 60 days, again, the lead to close time is 60 days. So beyond that, it's just noise. So if you're worrying about your pipeline 90 days out, but you don't get leads, the lead time is 60 days. You also can't make decisions that way. So that's the first challenge, is managing making decisions based off of just what's in the pipeline. If you do track win rates or establish targets, a lot of agencies will do it based off of key performance indicators or KPIs. So an example for this might be you want to see 15% year over year growth. This is a classic problem that's known as managing to KPIs. And I'll use a little analogy to explain why it doesn't work. Let's say you're going to a wedding this weekend and it's 2 hours away. Well, you know that if you drive 60 miles per hour, you'll get to your destination in 2 hours. So what you don't want to do is get in the car, get on the highway, and start driving 60 miles per hour, regardless of the traffic, because you're trying to get there in 2 hours. And in the agency world, we do this if we set a, say, 15% year over year growth target. Well, are we going to burn people out along the way to hit that target? The KPI should be an indicator of performance, but not really a director of your performance. So managing to KPIs is another anti-pattern that I see with setting win rates. So what does work? Well, your history of winning proposals that you share with clients is probably the best indicator of what the future is going to hold for you. So an article that I recently published, and we can probably share it in the notes for the podcast here, is setting win rates based off of historical performance. And if it's helpful, I can kind of go through the process of what that looks like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool. So when you're tracking leads that could evolve into proposals, that could evolve into projects, what you want to do is track the win expectancy of that opportunity. What is a win expectancy? It's going to be kind of a meta question. So the win expectancy on an opportunity could be expected. This is a project that your agency should win based off of how you're positioned, your portfolio work, the client's needs. This is really kind of why you're in the business. I'd say even would be a win expectancy where it's kind of a coin flip, or maybe 1 out of 3 of these types of proposals you'd win. You could service the project, but you don't maybe have a unique or distinguishing strength in your proposal. You could see another agency, maybe with a bit more experience, winning that. And then the third category for win expectancy on an opportunity would be unlikely. It's just a shot in the dark, but maybe it's a really interesting client or a project that the agency really wants to work on. File that under unlikely and cross your fingers. But what you can do here is track what actually ended up happening with those opportunities. And for the opportunities that were lost, go back and look at the last 6 months or 12 months and say, okay, how many of those opportunities were expected wins? Because those are the opportunities that when they come around next time, if you make the right adjustments, you can win them. And that allows you to fold those losses in as future wins. And then you can take a look at, of all the proposals that we sent, if we include the ones that we won, as well as a couple of the expected wins, we now have an upper bound for a scenario where of what our win rate might be. So yeah, in the article, there's some numbers that are going to translate better than here in audio format. But basically, I walk through how an agency that, let's say, they sent out 62 proposals and won 19. Well, they had a 31% win rate over that period. But converting 2 expected losses into wins would bring that win rate up to 34%. Converting some of those even win likelihoods would bring it up to 37%. So there's a logic to how you're arriving at the upper bounds of the win rate. And that's important because you want the team to also understand how you arrived at the number.
The emphasis here then is there are, well, let's be fair. I think many agencies aren't even going through this exercise and they're just hoping to win whatever they can win. And they don't really plan or predict the future in any way. They just know what it is once it becomes the present. That's very challenging way to run your business, especially once you get over even probably 6, 7, 8 employees. The other option is, and we see this a lot, and it's not a totally useless exercise, but an owner may say, well, I did $1 million in revenue last year. What would be a good growth rate? I don't know, 20%. So let's do 1.2 next year or something like that. That is okay, but it's not really informed by any type of bottoms up analysis or an extrapolation of what has occurred in the past, right? Like I'm not really using, I'm not doing any ground truthing, so to speak, on my ability to get there. I'm just setting an arbitrary target based upon what I want to happen. And what I like about your approach is I am truthing it and grounding, excuse me, in what I know. And I'm even going a little bit further in analyzing, well, if we were to change the way we approach any one proposal, what could be optimized and how could that improve our win rate? And would we see a marginally improved performance from what has happened historically um, by making these adjustments? And ultimately, I think for many organizations, a lot of this is the willingness to experiment, to try things, to time bound these activities and understand, is it getting me closer to where I want to go or further away? And I think for a lot of us, it's really hard to think that way unless we're very accustomed to it. And that was another thing that you talked about that I really liked is your willingness to, and especially in a previous role, your willingness to embrace experiments, but certainly have them be time bound and not just run experiments indefinitely, but try things, because ultimately it's really hard to know what the right answer will be at any given point in time. A lot of this needs to come through incremental learnings, at least in my own experience. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, in the scenario where the agency sets a target that's just 20% higher than what they've seen over the previous 12 months, if you're not looking at how those opportunities were won or lost, I think the only way that you can achieve 20% better performance is by sending 20% more proposals,
Yeah.
generating 20% more leads.
Yeah.
And that's assuming that every incremental lead that you generate is going to be of equal quality to the ones that you got over the previous 12 months, which often isn't the case.
Yep.
Usually, as you generate more leads, you're casting a wider net. They're less qualified for the work that your agency does. So I would expect to see a win rate decline as lead volume goes up. But I think depending upon the nature of the services that you provide, that it could be an appropriate strategy. I think the more standardized your services are, the more transactions you have, it can just be a bit more of a volume game.
Yep.
If you're an agency that does a lot of custom work, then you want to be looking at the win rates and really diving into, the proposals that were sent to clients. If you can get client feedback on what the winning vendor shared that maybe gave them an advantage, that information is huge. And I think, honestly, clients owe that to you, given the amount of time I see go into proposals. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. One exercise that I actually used to have our team do before we sent a proposal to the client when we were drafting it was say, okay, if we lose this opportunity, why are we going to lose it? and the business developers would try to find the one or two weakest areas of the proposal. And if we could strengthen those, we would. If we couldn't, we at least knew kind of, well, we're losing for the right reason. So if a project needs a specific type of portfolio case study that we just don't have, okay, someone's gonna win out on that. But that's just another way that looking at the opportunities in retrospecting them is really valuable.
Finish here. I would love to hear a little bit about. So I hear you on how we're going to plan for win rates, and you've shared a lot of really good stuff around things to consider at certain inflection points. What I would also love to hear from you is just sort of your approach to operational challenges. Are you someone who's very technology led? Are you very process led? What is the best way to start if I'm an owner who feels as if I'm in dire need of better operations, which is a very broad topic within any organization? But let's just start there generically. How would you start to diagnose issues to apply solutions via process and or technology, and then subsequently maybe even automation? Like, where do you begin with an agency owner if they come to you with a prompt around operational challenges? Can you help me solve them? Where do you begin? Because I think it's very overwhelming for any of us as we think about our own businesses, especially if we're of a fairly large size. There's so many things within our business that could be considered operations, and it can be very overwhelming.
Mhm. I think a lot of agencies think of operations and they think of like administration and they think of busy work and
Ooh,
tasks.
okay.
I hear operations and what I think of is profitability. I think operations owns the cost side of things, and that cost side is both monetarily, but it's also the efficiency for every
Yep.
salary, everyone working at the agency, and how efficient they are. So when I work with a client, what I want to do first is get a sense of the P&L, get a sense of what are their
Yep.
project. If it's assuming it's a design development brand agency, what are their project margins? Can they track their project margins? What are their costs overall? And then once you start from the costs, which are far more controllable than the revenue side. That's the other thing I like about starting from cost is that you hold the lever on cost. What do we need to see in terms of leads? We'll stay in kind of like the business development sphere. What do we need to see in terms of leads generated or proposals sent? Okay. How do we? So we can arrive at a number. What processes do we have in place to track, say, inbound leads that are coming in? Do we have a CRM? Do we have a even a spreadsheet that's doing that? So that's kind of the fundamental stuff. Is you need to be tracking the data as it comes in, and you don't need to go crazy tracking data. You just need to be consistent with it. And this can be once a week. You set aside 15 minutes to catch up on the inbound leads that came in. You make sure that the information on them is correct. You have a win expectancy that you're tracking on them if it comes to win rate. And kind of getting that plumbing in place is the first step. The second thing that I see with agencies is a lot of documentation, a lot of thinking and hard work that goes into putting together the plan, but difficulty socializing that, difficulty having people
Yep.
on board to the documentation and reliably follow it. So what you need to do is find ways to complement the documentation with action, and often that can be light meetings, asynchronous updates, little activities that the team completes, but they're not reading documentation to figure out how to do it. The documentation is there for reference if someone wants to look it up, but it's really the operations team's responsibility to figure out how do you make this part of the muscle memory of the agency through meetings, async updates, and just good communications internally.
Yeah, we had a conversation previous to this, but I very much view that as the change management aspect of imparting change or standards, whatever you want to call them within the organization. It's one thing to say, this is what we're going to do starting from today. It's another to promote and reinforce that behavior change within the organization, which I think we all feel that pain very commonly. And we think about, for those of us who are creating those plans, at least maybe I'm only speaking for myself, I usually think about, well, I felt like I did enough research and diligence and put something that was well thought out and well articulated to the organization. Why are they not doing what I want them to do? And of course, because we're all human and because we all have other priorities that we have to take care of each and every day, just coming up with the plan does not actually impart the behavior change which is required. And so it's why I think change management in particular has become such a big topic over the last couple decades, or last decade in particular, and something that I think every organization should be thinking about if they are going to impart some type of operational procedure or something that would be different than previously. Uh, are they on top of their ability to also enforce, um, really even rate or judge if the organization is responding to that? How what needs to be recommunicated? How can I continue to make sure that I'm reapplying that thing which I've asked them to do? I think we all probably fail at that. It's hard because I think a lot of us view these changes as one and done. We don't view them as ongoing habits within our everyday work, and that is a definite mindset shift, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think one of the keys to unlocking, what can become a habit for the organization is people will use what helps them. People will use what they find helpful to them. So if you're having trouble getting a policy adopted or getting some processes adopted, you need to look back to go to design thinking. Like, was the user in mind when we put this process in place? If you're telling a designer to send a status update on this day very specifically, and they don't understand why, or they haven't seen, it actually relieves a lot of anxiety on the client side, so that the day to day becomes easier if I push more updates out to the client. Until someone experiences that, it can be difficult to get buy in. So I would encourage folks that are doing operations to really include the people who are going to be um, expected to follow those processes and improve upon them. And your job is more about making sure that the solution that the team comes up with still solves the problem that was first identified. That's kind of how a lot of operations is taking shape these days.
Yep, that's great. All right, Michael, can't thank you enough for joining us today. This has been a really healthy conversation. I really appreciate your insight around thinking through revenue forecasting and how to use those previous win rates as ways to determine what could happen in the future and how we can optimize for that. And I also really appreciate your conversation around enforcing change within the organization and how that can be challenging but necessary for many of us. So thank you so much for joining us, and hope everyone enjoys this episode. Thanks.